I think first of all, just I'd like to say this is an exciting time for college football. You hit week 5 in the season. We're getting really kind of into conference play, and the ball games, become seems like more significant, more of a more importance. And so to play Saturday here at DKR in a top 25 matchup, 2 undefeated teams. This is why we do what we do, right? This is why we work as hard as we work all off season. This is why, training camp is what it is. This is why you try to, have a tough non-conference schedule to prepare for ball games like this. Should be a heck of an environment. Looking forward to getting back to DKR with our fans. They were tremendous last week on the road at Baylor. I know they'll be fired up here to be at DKR. I think from our team's perspective, one, we've got a great deal of respect for Kansas and the team that they have and what they've built over 3 years. And they've got a lot of weapons offensively. They've got a great scheme. I think defensively, it's easy to see the improvement that they've made over 3 years. Very opportunistic defense, one that creates turnovers and gets the ball out, plays a physical brand of football. So I know it's going to be a great challenge. I know we're going to need to play with our best foot forward for 4 quarters. That's what this game's going to take.
Thanks, Coach. We'll go ahead and start with Kirk.
Yes, Steve, you mentioned Kansas being more physical. Is that the main change you've seen in the Jayhawks program after having played them the last 2 years?
Well, I think Coach Leipold, historically, everywhere he's been, he's had physical teams. They believe in running the ball offensively. And then, defensively, sometimes it's getting the pieces to the puzzle right. And, obviously they hit the portal really hard on the defensive front this offseason, and they've got some real playmakers up there, guys who, not only do well against the run, but affect the quarterback and have gotten some sacks. But I think the other thing that you see defensively out of them is they believe in the scheme, right? They've got a veteran secondary. They've got veteran linebackers that all work well together. You just don't see kind of the lapse in coverages and things from year 1, and then it gets better in year 2, and now they're in year 3. And I think they're playing that physical style up front. They're playing sound in the back end. And then now 4 games in, they're playing with a lot of confidence, and confidence is probably the biggest key as you develop as a defense. And so, that there's levels to it, but I do think that physicality is showing up more because they're playing a really confident brand of football.
Joe Cook, go ahead.
Steve, I know one of the reasons you mentioned you hired PK was because he gave you problems. I'm just kind of curious, maybe from back when he was at Boise or even at Washington, how have you seen him and his scheme evolve in the past 5 years?
Well, I think that's one thing I admire about PK. He's not one of these guys that just kind of stuck and this is how I've always done it, and so this is the way we're going to do it moving forward. He's evolved as a coach. When he was at Boise, it was a lot of quarters coverage, and that was their style with some different fronts involved. There was a stretch there when he was at Washington. They were a big 3 deep, Seattle Seahawk cover 3 deep team, and they were really good when he did that at Washington. Since we've gotten here, we've evolved some. We're playing a little bit more man. We're playing a little bit more tighter coverage. So I think that's a credit to PK, is that he's willing to evolve and to change and to fit his scheme predicated on the personnel that he has. And so, I think that's probably the thing that I've noticed most, is that his willingness to evolve schematically and then call it accordingly with the strengths of the players that he has.
Robbie Burton, you're up.
Yeah, Coach. The Kansas offense and your offense are very different styles, but they actually have some strong similarities, including a lot of window dressing pre-snap, and then also the variety of weapons you guys have, both teams have on offense. What is the thought process behind stopping this Kansas offense this week?
Well, I think it's important that we play a disciplined brand of football. First of all, I think we've got to have great eyes. We got to have great communication, so that we're tied on a string, that everybody's working well together. that everybody trusts their keys, what they need to do, and that they can trust the guy next to him, that he's going to do what he's supposed to do. That's always important, especially when you start talking about option football. Everybody's got to have their rules and be dialed into that. But I think ultimately it goes back to our level of physicality. We have to play a physical brand of football, most notably at the line of scrimmage. We've got to be really sound at the line of scrimmage. Anytime a team can run the ball, that opens up all of the other things that they want to do, right? Whether it's the play action pass, the trick plays, the things coming off of that. So I think it's really important that we're really good up front, and that we can defeat the run and play well against the run and be gap sound. But two, across the board, all 11 guys, we have to have great eyes, and we have to trust our training and that communication amongst everybody so that we're all on the same string.
Thomas Jones, go ahead.
Good morning, Coach.
Morning.
I was curious about the latest on Cole Hudson, and if you guys have a time frame. And for those number 2 kind of second string offensive linemen, anyone making a big push for more playing time?
Cole's doing really well. I don't have a time frame on that, but his recovery has gone well. And so we're pleased with that. And we feel great about the 5 guys we have right now.
Roger Wallace, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, I'm curious about the way this offense is structured and the weapons that you have, but it's really playing out like you said, as far as nobody's putting up huge numbers, but maybe it's the run game, maybe it's JT, maybe it's X. How important is that for the way you want your offense to operate?
Well, I do think it's important. I think inevitably for us, we're always at our best when we can run the football effectively. I think that helps the RPO game, which we definitely like to do. I think it helps the play action pass game, which we like to do. And then it helps the drop back pass game because, people deploy their people differently when they feel the threat of the run game. Ultimately, the coverages a lot of times dictate where that ball's going to go, predicated on where their emphasis is of who they're trying to take away and what they're trying to defend. And I think Quinn's done a nice job of not forcing the ball, but yet allowing the reads to come to him and distributing the ball effectively. And that's the beauty of when you have multiple weapons, is that you don't feel like you have to move people to specific spots and then you can become predictable. And I think now, we put our starting 11 out there predicated on the personnel that we're in, that you have Xavier, you have JT, you have AD, you have Jordan, you have Jonathan Brooks, you have Gunnar Helm when in some of our 12 personnel. All of those guys have proven to make their plays when their opportunities presented themselves. So naturally, as we go, certain games, other guys are going to have bigger games than others, predicated on some of the coverages that we get. And last week it happened to be JT. I thought he had a fantastic ball game. We've seen AD have multiple touchdown games. We've seen the playmaking ability of Xavier. So the key for us is to make sure that we've got a good plan week to week, and that the guys, understand that plan and execute the plan. And just know by the end of a ball game, everybody's going to have opportunities, but there might be a guy or two that just has a little bit of a bigger game predicated on what the defense decides to do.
Danny, go ahead.
Steve, we've talked a lot at various points about the ability of your receivers, and JT can be considered in this, and their ability to block downfield. I'm kind of wondering, from your perspective, is that inherent, or is that something that's learned once they get on campus, or maybe a combination of the two?
Well, we definitely take a lot of pride in it. When you're an RPO advantage throw type offense like we are, those work better when you block. If you're not blocking on the perimeter, anybody can throw a bubble, like the first play of the game. If you don't block, you get -5 yards. And so I was probably the most upset I was the entire game after the first play of the game last week, because we take a lot of pride in our perimeter blocking, and we put a lot of time and effort into that. I think our players now take a lot of pride in that. And I think that also is what spurns the long touchdown runs. I think we've seen longer runs the last couple of weeks is because of the commitment to block downfield, and we're eliminating that last defender to make a play on the runner because of the receivers going in to block. And so we take a lot of pride in it, but ultimately I think that's part of our culture, that whatever is asked of me, I'm going to give you all that I have. And our players do that down the field, and I'm proud of them for doing that.
Eric Henry, go ahead.
Morning, Steve. I know it gets overshadowed a little bit. I was wondering if you could just talk about the play of Gavin Holmes through the first 4 games and what he's brought as a veteran transfer.
Yeah, I think Gavin has played well. We talk a lot about a lot of the other guys, it feels like, and Gavin has kind of flown under the radar a little bit, but he's a very steady player. He's got great coverage skills. He's very natural, especially when he can play off coverage. That's something that he did at his previous spot. And so he's very comfortable doing that, even when he's in, kind of man principles. And he's got elite speed. So he does provide something a little bit different for us that way, especially when we play him to the field and we're kind of isolated at times. He's very comfortable playing that way. So again, it's a luxury for us to have the depth that we have in the secondary.
Got time for the last few questions in queue. Go ahead, Anwar.
Hey, Coach, when you look at the film and you see Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, how just impactful have those guys been for you? And I'm kind of curious as to, can you maybe speak on the work that they've done, maybe even the off season leading up to this, to be able to have the kind of impact that they're having so far?
Yeah, I think the first thing that jumps out to me is their development, from where they were in year one and to how far they've come in the program, not only as players, but as people, as leaders in the program. I think they're very impactful, one, in their play, right? I mean, they make really critical plays at critical moments, but two, who they are on a daily basis. I think they set the tone in that defensive line room, in our entire defense, and a lot of times on our team. I think that they've helped change kind of the mindset of a lot of the other players in that defensive line room in their development. We're seeing a different version of Alfred Collins than we've ever seen. I saw the best version of Vernon Broughton last week. I've seen a better version of Trill Carter than we've seen all season last week. So I think there's a level of a workman-like mentality in that room. And again, a lot of credit goes to Bo Davis for what he does with those guys. But I do think it starts with Murph and Sweat and what they've done and the work that they've put in for 3 years to get themselves to this point to play this style and this brand of football. And then most notably to be able to make those plays that they're making at critical moments. It's one thing to play well, but how well do you play when you got to have it? And, we've seen it from Sweat now. I think he has 2 4th down stops where he's literally just defeating a block. It wasn't so much a scheme. It was him making a play. And so on that front, I'm proud of those guys for what they're doing on the field, but I'm probably equally as proud of them of who they are off the field and what they're like on a daily basis in our building.
Go ahead, Chip.
Steve, can you just talk about the development of Derek Williams and Malik Muhammad and kind of how you've seen them grow?
Yeah, I'd love to. But both of those guys have really worked at their craft, different positions, obviously, one playing corner, one playing safety. And I always think it's difficult when you come into a program as a 5-star recruit and there's that natural expectation that you're going to walk in the door and be a frontline starter from day one. And I think they quickly realized we have some other really good players at those positions that we're going to make these guys earn their playing time because they were going to play good football too. And I think that what we've seen here through the first month of the season is that both of their games have naturally and gradually improved over the first month of the season. And I feel like they played their best football this past Saturday at Baylor. I know Manny had a couple plays that were close and bang, bang, he'd love to have back. But he's in great position and he's playing the game with a lot of confidence. So I love what he's growing into. I think Derek Williams gives us a very unique skill set at the safety spot. He's a really good tackler. It probably didn't look like much, but there was a run that spit out in the 4th quarter last week where we don't fit it right. I think in like a 3rd or a 4th down, and Derek Williams makes a really clean tackle in the middle of the field to limit that run to about a 12-yard gain. But yet he can cover man to man and he can play tight and man coverage. And so he gives us that skill set. He gives us a speed factor. So both guys have committed themselves to the development aspect of the game and really understanding the defense, but also credit the other guys in that room for making them better because they haven't made it easy on them to earn their playing time.
Your last ones, Terry, you want to try again?
Yeah, sorry about that. Coach Sarkisian, so Texas did it again, 3 back-to-back drives for 21 points, highly efficient football play. Is that what you see? And then do you have a name for this, this flurry of touchdowns so quick? I think you did it in under 6 minutes.
No, I don't have a name. I wish we could do that all the time.
Could we call it the Sarkisian tri-tip or something like that? Right?
I think naturally as a coach, we always want it to be efficient and clean and really good execution and all those things. But football, historically is a game of momentum. And I think when we can find momentum that way and find rhythm offensively, I think it's helpful. But on the flip side of that, I think there's a idea you need to be able to play complementary football as well. And all 3 phases need to work really well together. One of the coolest moments for me was Jaylen Ford gets the interception right on 4th down, and then the offense goes 95 yards for a touchdown. Xavier gets the big punt return. Then we go 2 plays, double pass, Cedric Baxter touchdown. So this idea of complementary football is something that we've been really trying to work on and preach, that all 3 facets work well together. So as much as I, want to credit, hey, the offense did great. They're scoring 3 drives in a row. The defense is playing well in that same time frame. Special teams is chipping in. So it all kind of goes hand in hand. That we're capitalizing when we get turnovers and sudden changes. We're getting critical stops defensively, and then the special teams is doing what they need to do to create their plays as well.
Last one, Cedric, go ahead.
Hey, Steve, who have you faced in the last few years that gave you a look similar to what Kansas does offensively? And if he was scout team quarterback, how did Savion Red do, giving you a look on Jalen Daniels?
Yeah, I think probably the closest thing was last year going against kind of Martinez at Kansas State, which going into that game, we weren't really sure which quarterback was going to go. It was Will Howard, it was Martinez. Martinez played, but Kansas State has a lot of offense too, and they have option football at their finest. You still have to defend the play action pass. You had to defend Deuce Vaughn, and they still ran the ball really well. So that was a very complete offensive football team. And in that game, it kind of felt like when you play Kansas, man, you better maintain and corral the quarterback, because he's a weapon throwing it and running it. And Daniels, the running back, Devin Neal, is a really good player, a very versatile guy. I mean, I think he has 11 catches on the year as well for almost 200 yards. And then they have the scheme to do all the other things with the play action pass and whatnot. So that's probably the most comparable thing. But I would say Kansas is unique to themselves in what they do. And so the best thing that we had to prepare for Kansas was having to defend them the last 2 years, quite frankly. And so we were fortunate enough to had to play them 2 years in a row. The second year we did a little better than the first year of getting some stops.